Welcome back. WNST here. You can have some best of next week. I don't even know what's going to be. It might be some rock and roll. It might be some baseball, football, whatever it is. But tell you what, over the course of time, I've written more about the Orioles and have been on a little bit of a binge here about how awful this is going to be. The only other media guy that I've seen locally is this guy. He is my longtime friend and fellow 22 bus taker to Memorial Stadium from Hollandtown, Hon, where the G&A, Coney Island hot dogs and Epstein's and all that good stuff. By the way, Jaeger's music store is like a groceria, and Hausner's is now like an apartment, dude.
Luxury apartment.
It's crazy, nice. Man.
No, it's crazy. There's still a few stores there from the good old days.
But, I drove over there the other day, and I'm like, what the hell happened to Hausner's, man? I mean, I got my first guitar lessons from John Shand on the second floor at Jaeger's in 1974. Oh, yeah. It's all gone, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah, there's still like the appliance store on East Avenue. There's still a few things kicking. But, yeah, my parents have been there for, I'm 44, 42 years. And same row home. And, hey, you still got Matthew's Pizza. There's enough, man. There's enough.
There's plenty there for everyone. You can also get an Icy Delight as well. All right, so look, I want to talk about Ray Lewis, and I want to talk about Lamar Jackson and Joe Flacco, and I'm afraid if I don't do it at the beginning, you and I are going to go nuts on the Orioles. So what I'm going to do is, because you're my esteemed guest, Jason LaCanfora of CBS, I want you to pick. What do you think we should, because once we get into the Orioles, I don't think we're ever going to come out. I mean, that's going to be like a black and orange hole, I think.
Yeah, no, I mean, we can touch on some Raven stuff early if you want.
Well, Ray Lewis's legacy, it really was a wonderful weekend. I didn't love the speech. I love the emotion that it gives me, and I love that it gives me, much like you in this industry, a chance to run into Keith Washington for the first time in 17 years, who turns out to be a really cool dude, and you get to see some old friends. I mean, that for me it was, anyway.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think we kind of, especially local here, understand the spectacle that is Ray, the spectacle that is Ray on the big stage. And Ray has always liked him some Ray and always liked the sound of Ray's voice. So, I mean, look, we all knew that was going to go over a half hour. We all knew there were points in it where you're kind of like, boy, I'm not positive. I think I kind of know what he's trying to say here. And there might be a point or two along the way where you cringe, but that's part of the package. That's part of what made him who he was. But he's obviously been a polarizing figure for a long time for things on the field and primarily off. And that is a big part of his legacy. And it's part of, I guess, what makes him, a kind of love him or hate him guy, right? I don't know how much middle ground there's ever really been with Ray Lewis, and I think his speech probably falls into that same category.
Yeah, but the everything about the Ravens, everything about the franchise, the statue, all of that runs through him on the football field. And that part of it, there is some magic in that, right? For how excited your parents were the first time they won and the second time they won. Certainly for me, kind of tied all that together as well. And the Ravens are going to have a rich thing going on here with Reed going in and then Ozzie next. And then after that, Yonda and Suggs are at least going to be in the Hall of Debate, right? I mean, there's going to be all of that going on, whereas maybe this is where we take the turn across Camden Yards. And Jay, I was in Cleveland, right? And I see what Cleveland has become around the Indians now there. And Cleveland's like clean and safe and well lit and vibrant, and there's no graffiti and there's no bums and there's no... And Pittsburgh, I go there on Sunday, and they've built like bars and stuff between the two stadiums there that didn't exist. We got to get something going on around here with the baseball team, and it's not going to happen on the field over the next 5 years. And the leadership, everything about this, and I know you're familiar with my Dear Orioles letters, which are still, I thought I had a Dear Orioles letter coming for Adam Jones, and then he abstained, and now his legacy's not quite written, so I've pulled the letter back, Same thing with Showalter and Duquette. I'll figure them out later on, but boy, there's a lot of letters to be written here and a lot of splaining to be done. And I don't know if John and Lou Angelos are cut from much of a different cloth in regard to competency and in regard to being able to recruit the best people, as our dear Orange leader would say. I don't know how this is going to get fixed, Jay, and I'm a little worried. I'm worried about Nashville building something or Portland or some other city that might want baseball more than we're going to want baseball here 5-10 years from now, because I don't know where the money's coming from, bro. That's the part that really has me concerned here. And I saw that whopper they're building down in D.C. where you used to run around with an irrelevant hockey team that's now a little bit of a powerhouse in its own right. I see those cranes coming up behind Nationals Park, and I really am worried about whether the Orioles are going to exist 10 years from now.
Well, I'm not worried about that. I mean, I just look at Major League Baseball. I mean, look, if Tampa gets their thing built, then maybe that changes things. But, you know, whether it's Montreal, Nashville, Portland, I'm certainly not naive, and I understand the macro level economics of big board professional sports in this country, but I'm not worried about them leaving. I don't know how long they stay in the Angelos family. I don't know the outcome of this massive thing and what that means in the short term or the long term, depending on where, you know, how that money is ultimately sorted out. I just look at Camden Yards and this stadium and what it has been, and even what it still continues to be, even if it's at 50% capacity. And I have a hard time thinking that's not one of the, okay, if whether they expand to 32 teams or stay at 30 or whatever, one of the 30 markets where they're playing baseball. I mean,
but who's going to come and see it? I mean, that's the issue. I mean, they need to get people interested in it, and they're not good at that. Hey, Jay, they're not good at it in Pittsburgh either, right? Like, they've had their little, same as the Orioles. They had their run, they had their McCutcheons, they've had their players, and I had a bus trip coming back from Cleveland where we did the Indians game on Friday in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and all the usual suspects. We saw Ray go in and all that, and on Sunday morning, I had 150 people who had already paid, right, to go to a Pirates-Cardinals game on a lovely, beautiful, ideal 82-degree day in Pittsburgh when regatta was going on, where a bus would drop you off at the front door, where all you had to do was walk in, hang out 2.5. We left in the fifth inning of the game, and half of the people elected to take an express bus back to Baltimore and said, I don't even want to go to a baseball game I've paid for in the summer of 2018. And this kind of alarmed me. You know what I mean? It kind of alarmed me that these people don't like baseball. They don't like coming into the city. I know you're on a different end of the political spectrum as well, where I reside, where I've seen you walking through the city with your children in an Orioles shirt and flip-flops and a ball cap with some suntan lotion on, going to an afternoon game. I live down here. I've been accosted at corners by squeegee kids and by the guy toting the cup that he's had for 15 years. I know why people don't come into the city, and I'm really worried about all of it. But certainly for me, to you, in 1992, Camden Yards was the glue that brought everything together. But it needs people, and in order to have people, it needs to be well managed, and it hasn't been. And I am worried about the next 5 or 10 years, because these are the tender times where this thing's going into a hole. They're going to lose 115 games this year, and it doesn't look much better the next 2 years. What's it going to take to bring it back? It's going to take somebody we haven't met, maybe John Vitalin, huh?
Well, I think go back to that, right? So that was, late June or early July when he was hired, and obviously he wasn't starting until August 3rd. But I think there's been one tacit acknowledgement after the next that we don't have it all figured out, that there is a changing of the guard going forward there, that we are going to go about doing things differently. Now, it's not going to be bombastic. It's not going to be a whole lot of press conferences. It's not going to be a lot of proclamations from ownership. I think that part of it probably the son may be like the father, but I think everything else is if you're really paying attention, this is not the same Orioles. And I think you can go back to letting the kids in for free, and that hasn't obviously been a tremendous boon to attendance, but it was a tacit acknowledgement that we got to reconnect the kids in the city. We've got to continue to try to make this as family-friendly as it could be. There's problems downtown, and a baseball team isn't going to solve all that. And some people, because of their biases or their willingness to let people propagate fear upon them or whatever else, are just going to stay away. So, I mean, that is what it is. But from a baseball standpoint, I think even how they've marketed the team, even when they had all the stars that have been since traded away, it wasn't so much like come see these guys play because the people who care already are, but it was more like come for this concert and come for this bobblehead and come for this and we're going to have to give a ton of stuff away. And you know what? Their Saturday and Sunday attendance has been pretty hard for a team that's horrible. There have been many times where I'm down there with my kids on the weekend thinking, I can't believe there's 35,000 people there. Like,
well, your kid wants to go get this flying Kevin Gosman thing, and they're still giving it away. And I said to my wife, I'm like, I can't believe they're giving this Gosman item away. He's been in Atlanta a month. And she said, well, what the hell else are they going to do with him? And I'm like, well, you sound like the marketing director now, and I guess that's not such a bad idea when you're 50 games under 500, and maybe there's 500 more people that'll come out there to get one of these things. I don't know, but I mean, none of this is a good look, and I guess all of it really is the end of the Hindenburg going down here over 25 years and abject poverty, right? I mean, like literally, and now how do you rebuild? And that is a great question because Peter is no more. He's not making decisions. It'll never be his vision again. Now, what is the vision? Who are the people running it? Who are the stars we're going to root for? Why are we going to reconnect with you? Why is my business going to invest in you? Why am I going to come down to? Why am I going to care? Because it has nothing to do with Book Powell anymore, even Cal Ripken, although they've trotted Brooks Robinson back out now and Eddie Murray, which is, I mean, it's almost a stark reminder of how effed up it's been that these guys have never been involved. But I would agree they're trying, but then what happens? Then they need really, really smart people, to make baseball decisions on the field and recruit those kind of people. And then I guess then that comes into, well, where's Duquette and Buck and Brady Anderson and all of this? Because in the end, they're going to need better baseball players. And where are they going to come from? They're going to come from coaching, leadership development, all of that. And then they talk about the international market, but then somebody has to go in and pick these players. And I don't know that they have those people. If they had those people on staff, I think they would be in better condition than it is with where they were with this crazy fire sale because they had no talent in the minor league level, and what they had in the major league level wasn't good enough. And they've overextended on Chris Davis. I mean, there's a book to be written here, The Peter Principles 2, The Aftermath, and you're a hockey guy, and I've written about Rocky Wirtz and what happened there. I'm waiting for the Rocky Wirtz to come over the hill here and fix this thing, right?
You gotta, but I mean, like, there's a lot to unpack there. I mean,
of course,
none of us can predict the future, but I would say this, the hiring of John Beadley is an acknowledgement that we don't have the whole business side figured out. We're not connecting with the community the way we probably should, and we think that this guy can help us. I think if you look at what they've done, expanding the kids zone in the stadium, and there's going to be things I think they continue to do to the stadium to try to bring people in. That they're hiring analytics. They're not sending out a whole lot of press releases about it because nobody knows who the hell these squats are anyway. You know what I mean? It's not like they're going to be household names. But as they assemble that staff, I think there will be people discussing this is what we're doing differently now. And we are going to try to keep up with the Joneses from a brain power standpoint. They're going to hire more scouts. They have to. They can't have, I mean, they're grossly understaffed for a long time. But again, a lot of this is the sort of lingering, whatever you want to call it, of Peter Angelos and this changing of the guard that's happening and a very difficult and horrible time for the organization with all these losses and all these guys leaving. But like, there was no way that like John Angelos could come in this like whatever June or July and all of a sudden sign men, right, and sign scope and make all this go away. That was never happening. So this is where they are. They are going to suck for a few years, no doubt about it. Hopefully they develop some stars, but I think the way they go about their decision making, they've already admitted. I mean, should Duquette have been the guy to say all that? No, but at least it was said. It was stated, we have committed these sins. We have omitted these markets that should be our lifeblood. We have done some things the wrong way, and there is a critical rethink going on here. What that means ultimately for Buck and Dan, I don't think any of us know. I'm not sure they absolutely know in the warehouse, but I definitely think more change is coming. I have a hard time seeing all three of those guys back, the Brady, Buck, Dan triumvirate. And I think some people won't buy in, but others might. If they get this kid Victor Mesa and he's 22 next year, tearing up AA, a step away from the majors, then that's a potential building block. I mean, I don't know. We see a lot of these kids in the minors. I mean, their system it's not what it was 3-4 years ago.
Well, there's no way for them to recruit active players, right? I mean, they have to draft into this. They're never going to recruit. And, I hear about Victor Mesa. I'll believe that when I see him, I'll believe that the number one prospect wants to sign for the Orioles over a $500,000 difference or whatever the number would be, that if you're going to be that kind of a ball player, that you might want to do it as a Yankee or a Cub or some other place. That's all. But, Jason LaCanfora is here. We're talking Oriole baseball. I guess in the end, Jay, we're all seeing the changes. Look, I'm not disputing everything you just said. I 1,000,000% agree with as gospel, and we see it the same way. But are you buying in to it being successful? Does it have credibility? Does it have sustainability? And right now, if I gave you $1 and said, go to Vegas or West Virginia or wherever you can bet on baseball these days, and said, bet on $1 that the Orioles, that this is going to work out and somewhat be successful to find them somewhere in a pennant race in the next 3 to 5 years in some credible way with 3 to 5 star or superstar players, which they're going to need to have. You need to have superstar players if you're going to compete with the Yankees and the Red Sox on a consistent basis. I can promise you they'll have superstars 3 to 5 years from now. So do you buy in that they can do it? That's the hard part, is buying into the Oriole magic when I don't see what's over the hill for this organization, and I've seen the scorched earth of what's behind it.
Look, I don't know. I mean, look, the Yankees aren't going anywhere. The Red Sox aren't going anywhere. The Tampa, because they're so creative and fairly ingenious and willing to look at things ways other people don't, find a way to hang around 500 every year. And Toronto has 2 of the 5 best prospects in all of Major League Baseball, who will probably start for them opening day next year in Vlad Guerrero Jr. and Bo Bichette. So, I'm not going to sit here and say it's rosy. I think that next year is going to probably be in some ways worse than this year. And then I'm hoping for only 90 losses a year after that. And then when we're into the 2020s, that's when you need to start seeing some of these kids showing their ability at the major league level. I don't know where it's going. I find some solace, certainly, in the omission of things that never would have been even thought, even remotely publicly acknowledged in the past. I think that there's enough smart people there who understand that they're not going to sign a bunch of home run hitters in free agency and think they're going to build a team that way anymore. That it's got to be younger, cheaper, more athletic guys who are more versatile, who can fill more than one peg. You can't keep putting a monster out there with 5 guys who don't have a position. But boy, if everything breaks right, all 5 of them might hit 35 home runs. So I think it'll be I think next year's product will be more exciting and more fundamentally sound. And yeah, they're going to lose 110 games, but I don't think they're going to lose 110 games with a shortstop, a third baseman at shortstop, a second baseman at third base, second baseman in right field, or if he's not in right field, it's a DH Trumbo in right field, with a first baseman in left field and a right fielder in center field. You know what I mean?
Well, if they come back next year with Cobb and Cashner and Bundy, if that's what it is, at least they have major league pitchers 3 nights a week. You know what I mean? So for that, trying out whatever Mike Wrights or whatever Tyler, whatever their names are that come up and I forget about them because they go away, the Jeffrey, all of these guys that they have 3 legitimate major league starting pitchers. At least they start from there, right?
Well, and this Dylan Tate, we've seen him. We saw him at Bowie, his second start. He had 5 great innings, and then the 6th inning was an abject failure. He's the key piece they got for Britton from the Yankees. What does he do? Dean Kramer, we've seen pitch twice at Bowie. He's not overpowering, but he's pretty damn smart and sharp and has pretty good control. Those guys are probably. If one of them is a 3 and one of them's a 5, then you did pretty good on those trades. If you're banking on long-term pitching for the Baltimore Orioles right now, you're getting out to Delmarva to see DL Hall as much as you can. And a year from now, wherever they start, the kid they just took, Grayson Rodriguez, in the first round this year, another high school kid. Those are two kids who you talk to people who know baseball that they project as potential ones or twos. And if they can develop them, and Hunter Harvey, if he just becomes a late inning guy, I'm fine with that too. Like, who knows, man?
Well, look at the Phillies and look at the Braves, right? Like,
right.
All these kids that I watched them play 2 years ago, like, who the hell are these people? They're going to be playing in October. I mean, or at least well into September at this point. And for those kinds of teams, you mentioned Tampa Bay. I mean, you look up and all they do is win and hang in. And you look at their lineups, and none of them ever look like Machado, but they look like big league ball players. So there is some hope for all of that. My question just who's going to be running it? That's all. When Duquette's done, like, who's the architect of this? And I didn't even know how to pronounce. I've been calling him Vidalin. You say Vidalin. I apologize to you, John Vidalin, if that's how it's pronounced. But I tried to ask around. But who's going to be the baseball guy? That's all. Who do we ask the questions to? Who's responsible? I think that's a very legitimate question for anyone to ask.
The chain of command, the flow chart, who reports to whom. What exactly is Brady's role? I mean, for me right now, I've looked at what they've done, and I've got a couple of major questions left. What do they do with the on-the-field product? What do they do with Chris Davis? I mean, Adam Jones, I don't think he's back next year. I still think they could trade him this year. Trumbo, whatever. If they have to pay him $13 million to stick around next year, who cares? They won't be paying anybody else. It's what do they do with Chris Davis? What do they do with Dan Duquette? And what do they do with Buck Showalter? And I mean, there's a chance none of them are back next year. I mean, if you were ever going to eat Chris Davis's contract, you might as well start eating it now when, you know what I mean, you're not going to be paying anybody else for the next 3 to 4 years anyway. So that's where, and I think they know that in the warehouse. The next stage now is,
why are we going to give him 450 at-bats next year, right? What's the point in that, right?
Right, and especially when you've got a kid like Mancini who should probably go back to first. I mean, if they got rid of Trumbo and they got rid of Chris Davis, then they've got all these young athletic outfielders, especially a lot of them are corner outfielders who need to play. That allows you to put Mancini back at first base. That allows you to bring Mountcastle up and just DH them. If the kid's back, he's got a major league back. There's no denying that. So he's not a third baseman. We know that. But if you bring him up and let him be your Trumbo, where he's in right field sometimes, he's in first base sometimes, he's DHing and he gets his 400 at-bats that way, so be it. But they've got to solve that riddle. And then who are all these new international scouts and who are these new analytics guys reporting to? Are they reporting to Dan Duquette? I mean, are they reporting to Brady Anderson? And I don't know that. Look, I will be disappointed if they, as much as I feel right now they've earned a complete blank check from me, and they've got a pretty good buy-in from me just on what they've done to this point. But if at the end of the day it's still Buck and Dan fighting over everything, making decisions, then if they allow that dysfunction to continue, then that will seriously undermine how I think right now. But I have a hard time thinking that they've come this far and torn this thing down the way they have. You know what I mean? To not go full throttle and understand that we now need this stench that's on everybody. We got to get them out of here. Or certainly, if Buck stays, Buck's in some other role. But Buck managing this thing and Dan Duquette overseeing the roster, that to me would be completely backwards.
Odds that I'll get my press pass back and be sitting in the front row asking a question, a baseball-related question of a baseball-related situation in the next 18 months, Jason?
Look, it could happen. It could happen. I think there's a lot of people there who understand that the way they had done business there for the better part of the last 25 years could not continue. Could not continue from a community relations level, could not continue from a baseball operations level, and could not continue from a business operations level.
I said that 12 years ago, by the way. I was roundly booed.
No, but I mean, again, you understand family dynamics. Like this was, a lot of this was going to be dictated by when Peter Angelos was, you know what I mean, no longer able to oversee the day-to-day operations. I shouldn't even say day-to-day, hour-to-hour operations of the Baltimore Orioles.
Or paperclip to paperclip.
We've reached, we've clearly reached that point, and I think it's going to take a period of time for the totality of this to be sorted out and for the Suns to make their full imprint on the team and in the community. But again, I am very enthused by what I've seen to this point. And I think by the end of the season, some of these other questions will be answered, and then we'll see. But I think they at least now understand that it's about competing for some of the best and the brightest in terms of just your brain trust. Not just on the field, but in who's picking. You know what I mean? In the days of 3 general managers or Sig Thrift or, keeping Duquette when he wanted to go to Toronto. Like, I don't think that stuff's happening anymore, Well, at least I hope it's not. I can't think it would. I have to think they've learned from those mistakes.
All right, 2 things left because I don't ever bring you on here, and they're 2 great, which leads me to Barry Trotz and the Capitals. Anything you want to say about that? Because you covered that beat. I respect your opinion implicitly on all things Russian hockey players, where you covered all of this stuff and waited your whole life for the Capitals to win a Stanley Cup. They've now won a Stanley Cup, and it's almost a little hangover-y here with a new coach, and I guess the expectations changed. Trotz went and got his money, but it does not reflect well upon the Stanley Cup champs, Jay, honestly.
No, I don't think it reflects well on Ted Leonsis. I mean, I think you got to put it where it goes. And we ran into each other at the Ravens camp, and it was about 5 days after the Caps had won the Cup, and guys were still, doing shots out of fountains in public parks or whatever.
And I told you things weren't going well, right?
And I said, we're talking, and I'm like, well, everybody's writing their columns about how fun this is and how great the parade was and where's Ovi now and where's the Cup now. And I'm like, the coach isn't going to be back, and the coach knows he's not going to be back, and nobody's even writing that Ted managed to screw up even this. Because that's where it was going, because of the way they disrespected him, because they didn't believe in that team, because they already had his replacement on staff. They didn't think they were winning a Stanley Cup, and then when they did, they weren't willing to pay market value for what a Stanley Cup coach who was out of contract would get on the open market. Now, I don't think either of us knew about the exact intricacies of what was in the contract and, what was in the 1-year extension or whatever, but it was clear that Trotz was a short timer there, and they weren't willing to change that thinking based on what he did, and they think it's them and not him. And I guess they're kind of thinking we almost won despite him because we didn't think we were winning with him, and now that we did, it's just our players and our way of thinking, and we can go get Reardon or whoever else, and we'll keep this thing going.
And what will we do? Win another cup or just keep this thing going, right? I mean, that's the question. And look, they've invested in everybody but Trotz this summer, right? So with every signing, it gets even more disrespectful that over a couple of $1 million, a guy who won him a cup would be thrown out the door to Long Island. I mean, they must have really disliked him inside.
But it just blew my mind that, nobody's chronicling this. And then sure enough, you and I talk, and then 2 days later, all the F finally hits the fan. And he's putting out his press release, and it's over. It seems like it's over in 30 seconds. But I'm like, it's been almost a week since they won this thing. The owner hasn't come out and done a mea culpa and said, we're going to do whatever it takes to keep Barry Trotz here. I'm like, this is over. And nobody's even writing that it's over. They're just Ovi had 6 shots out of the Cup today. Woo-hoo, go Washington. And I'm like, this thing it's already tainted. Like, it's the beer in that cup is already stale, but how does nobody see it? Because I guarantee you Trotz sees it.
Jason LaCanfora is with us, and I've saved the best for last because this is what you really do for a living. Joe Flacco and Lamar Jackson, and where this thing's going. And look, I am bullish on the Ravens. I'm going to spend about 12 hours in Vegas going through Yellowstone Park and to see Pearl Jam in Missoula because I got to get home, and Vegas is the best way. I may lay a friendly wager on the Ravens to be in Atlanta or at least be in January. I think they're going to be good this year. I mean, they got to stay healthy and like all that, but I really love the energy. I like what I see. I like, my 3 decades of covering this likes a quarterback with some hustle and some veteran and some piss and vinegar and wide receivers who have a little bit of that and the angry Suggs and the, Weddle who's hanging in there trying to make this happen at the end and Harbaugh who's trying to keep a job, Ozzie trying to go out. There's a lot of things tied together here that say to me, 7-3 at the turn, and then let's make it interesting,
Yeah, I think that, look, the AFC, I can't stump for any team. I mean, New England's going to win that division because that division is so awful. And Pittsburgh's still going to be pretty good, and you're going to have a motivated Ben trying to get a contract and a motivated Le'Veon Bell trying to get a contract. And then after that, it's a crapshoot. And somebody's going to win the South, but I'm not ready to to crown and coronate Jacksonville. I buy the Chargers roster, but I'm not sure I'd buy the coach, and injuries and crappy kickers, they tend to be their own worst enemy. So, yeah, I mean, you can make an argument for the Ravens. You can make an argument for, probably 12 of the 16 teams in that conference as potential playoff teams. They've got to get back to making home base a fortress. And part of that is, them renewing their covenant with the fans and getting people to buy in with not just their wallets, right? Because they got that up front. They got the PSL. They got the money. Actually buying in with their time and being willing to commit 5 hours on a Sunday afternoon when you factor in, parking and getting out of there and everything else to actually sit through that and giving them an offensive product that isn't a waste of their time. And I think Bisciotti's acknowledged that tacitly and otherwise through the selection of Lamar Jackson and through overhauling the wide receivers room. And so we'll see. I think they'll be a better team than last year, but I also think, man, last year was a gift. I mean, it just was.
It was sitting there. Yeah, it was sitting there.
I mean, it was a gift. I mean, it's Hundley and not Rodgers. It's it was Geno Smith and not Carr or whatever. I mean, it was just like every week it was just sitting there, and they found a way to friddle it away. So as much as I'm sitting here bagging on the AFC, I think it's going to be, in some ways, a tougher road to hoe this year. And we'll see. I mean, to me, Joe's going to have a good season. I don't think Joe's going to throw for 5,000 yards and 35 touchdowns, but I think Joe will have a solid season. I think they'll be better balanced on offense, and I think their season is going to be determined by, do they have a closer? Terrell Suggs at age 36, he's not. If you use him like the way they've used him every year, then he's not going to be your closer in December. If you use him the way Pittsburgh used James Harrison 2-3 years ago, where he barely, you know what I mean, you ramp him up as the season goes on, that's great. But if he's playing
we've seen veterans around here shot out of a cannon, whether it's Suggs, Steve Smith, all these guys that leave it on the carpet in September and October. We've seen a lot of that.
I mean, December, he's 36 years old, and he's played another 500 snaps or whatever.
Well, they don't know any other way. When you put them out there, you know what I mean? They're racehorses. They run hard, right?
It's Timmy Williams. It's
Bowser.
I thought Correa was an afterthought. But if that Hall of Fame game is some indication of the light bulb being on and them just putting him back on the edge, saying, go get football, then, if he can give them anything, great. But if it comes down to December and it's either Suggs or Judon are the only guys who are going to make a play in that front seven, then I'm not buying them. That's where it's going to come down to me. And, yeah, Bowser, Timmy Williams.
Well, Judon could be special, right? I mean, there's some whispers that he could be a takeover guy for a year and sort of some sort of Bart Scott, Dallas Thomas way where you really notice him for 16 games this year, right?
Yeah, I mean, he's got if he puts it all together and brings his A game. I'm not going to say all 16 games. I mean, I think that's a little naive at this point. But if he brings his A game 12 out of 16 weeks, he's going to set himself up for generational wealth. So. Yeah, I mean, this could be the season where he breaks the bank if he puts it all together. But that's sort of what I'm looking at. It's the same as last year. When teams know how to get to this defense, they spread them out. They make them win on the edge, and they don't have guys who really win on the edge. And especially last year without Tavon Young. So you put them in nickel or dime all the time, and then you say, who's going to beat me? Except for the guy who's going to the 36-year-old who's going to the Hall of Fame. Who else here is really going to beat me in the fourth quarter if I just start chucking it all over the field? And the answer the last couple of years has been nobody. So that's got to change. If that changes and they have that closer and they're better in the slot, and I think they will be. Young's looked really good. I was out there all week against the Rams. If he stays healthy, if Jimmy Smith stays healthy, if they develop one of these other edge presence, then I like them out on the perimeter. But if they can't win on the perimeter, then I don't see them winning 2 games in December. I think it's the same old situation, even with an improved offense. So that's where my focus is.
He is Jason LaCanfora of Highlandtown. I mean, if you were doing Monday Night Football, you wouldn't say of CBS, of your podcast, the formula. You would just say LaCanfora, Highlandtown, deuces, right?
Maybe
pretty much.
Bishop John Newman, kindergarten and high school, something like that. R.I.P.
I would see Colgate Elementary. Hey, man, always good to visit with you. We'll get to the Patriots and the Palace intrigue and all that, and I'll darken your doorstep sometime in October, and we'll talk some football next time. But it was good having you on to talk some Orioles because there aren't a whole lot of people out there writing with the insight and outrage in balance, like I see what you have, because there should be some outrage. There really should. If you're not pissed off, then you don't care. I mean,
right.
They're 50. It's a disgrace. I mean, on top of that, now it's, well, how do we fix it? Fine. And then there's, well, why is it a disgrace and why is it no longer going to be a disgrace? And I think, these are good conversations to have, but holding them accountable, I'm never going to stop doing that, Jay.
No, absolutely. That's what the job entails. And we'll see, if they can develop another group of core and young potential stars, and those guys get to their second year of arbitration without having at least turned down significant contract that would buy at least a couple of years, like the Trout deal, then you're saying history is repeating and, oh my God, the sky's falling again. But I just want to see them build that core and have those decisions to make. And I do truly believe that in 2021, they would not be naive enough to, if they had the next Scope, the next Britton, the next Machado, to, hold on to them too long, not make the decision to trade them and or sign them when they have 2 or 3 controllable years left, and then let this whole circus come into town again.
Well, this whole thing has felt like a car crash we all watched and could have predicted. I sat here and watched it on the radio, and now that the car has crashed, no one wants to talk about how it got crashed. And, I think that's the whole fact of the sell-off was mismanagement to begin with, and I think we've all seen that. Now we're going to live through the long remnants. Hey, some great days down in Bowie. You and me, Del Marva, we'll do it up. Jay, always a pleasure. I've held you way too long. Go do what you do, and we'll be following along on Twitter and Facebook and anywhere that you're out doing what you do.
Sounds good, man. Stay trouble.
Jason LaCanfora. You can find him out on Twitter anywhere the National Football League is served as well. You can find me out on the Buy a Toyota.com Audio Vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn Radio app. We do come in crystal clear from wherever you happen to be. Lots of great stuff in. I'm doing a little vacay. There's going to be some great best of stuff coming your way on the AM radio side of things. All of it brought to you by our friends at Royal Farms. Real fresh, real fast. Make sure you're downloading and using that ROFO app. You can also get the rewards card. Have it in your wallet. Make sure you're using that when you're pumping your gas. You'll get your points, your Western fries, that tasty, crunchy fried chicken that I'm craving right now. Delicious Royal Farms. Real fresh, real fast. I am Nasty at WNST.net. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Twitter. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Snapchat. I'm everywhere you are out on the internet world, including Facebook Live, as well as our YouTube, WNSTV channel. We are WNST.net, AM 1570 and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.